through. Now, to my buddy, Tim Pringle, that didn't make it any better because he's being spit on and accosted in the
Right.
subway in New York. But I also reminded him he doesn't have to know and he will never understand because he lives in a country where you have done for him what he didn't have to do for himself. And it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, but just remind yourself tonight, Tim, he doesn't know, he will never understand because you have done for him what he didn't have to do for himself. And when people make disparaging comments about America, when Americans make disparaging comments about America, I simply think to myself, you're just putting your ignorance on display. You don't know what you don't know, and you're broadcasting to the world what you don't know because you have never had to be in the shoes or the boots of the guys and gals that I served with. And if you did, you would never make these comments. Because let's just be honest, America is not perfect, not even close. But I've been all over the world, and there is not another nation on earth, not even close to the freedoms that you have in America. So complain all you want, but you can't go anywhere else and find better, not even close.
That is a great answer. It's an answer that I like to hear. The reason I asked that is I went to college kind of when the Iraq War was not in a great place, I think is what would be a way to say. It wasn't as bad as 06, 07. And I was a poli-sci guy, so I had classes with young people, and they talk about like American soldiers were over there like slaughtering kids or just stuff like that. I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. And not only that, you're saying those things from the air-conditioned campus of the University of Wisconsin. You're never going to get on a plane and fly over there, but you'll critique, you'll judge people you don't know. And that always drove me up the wall. And I feel like, unfortunately, that anti-American mindset seems to be getting more and more common.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Coming up, we'll check in with PK in Buffalo. We have so much to get to throughout the show. We're going to recap the crazy weekend of the NFL coming up next hour as well. Plus, previewing both games tonight, Titans and Bills, Vikings and Eagles in a doubleheader where the Eagles and Vikings kick off in Philly, roughly halftime of game number one in Buffalo with the Bills and Titans. Chad, later this weekend, 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern, CBS kickoff, Tennessee and Florida, where the Vols at Neyland are currently at DraftKings an 11-point favorite over the SEC's rival. And for those not familiar with this, go ahead and lay out the beware of big games where Tennessee's favored against Florida.
Well, Florida's won 16-17 in this series, and you hear that and think, okay, Urban Meyer was the coach at Florida for a while. They won 2 national titles. That makes sense because Tennessee's been pretty bad, mediocre for 15 years. Well, Tennessee lost to Jim McElwain as the coach, lost to Ron Zook as the coach, lost to Will Muschamp as the coach, did not beat Dan Mullen as head coach at Florida also. They've lost to some pretty average Florida teams. Now, watching these two teams play through 3 games, Tennessee's better. Tennessee's the better football team. Vegas has them as 11-point favorite because Tennessee is taking care of business. They go on the road and beat Pitt in a game. They don't play that well offensively. They destroy Ball State. They destroy another MAC team 63-6 over Akron this weekend. Credit to Josh Heupel because there's one thing about this Tennessee team, and you see it all over college football, teams getting scares from majorly inferior opponents. I had no concern of that against Akron. I knew Tennessee was going to show up and blow them out and pick their score in that game. That's a credit to Josh Heupel and the culture he has in Knoxville. Now, the big question mark is, will that culture lead to Tennessee shaking whatever spirit is within them, that when they see that orange helmet with the blue Gators printed on the helmet, that they play in fear and they make big mistakes and they don't perform up to expectation? That's a big step. I think it's a new day in Knoxville with Josh Heupel. But Hutton, we've seen multiple Tennessee coaches be in some pretty good spots in this rivalry and have their team show up and look bad against the Gators. Watching Florida Saturday night, Tennessee's a better team. Anthony Richardson has the ability to make big plays with his legs. Their passing offense, not quite there right now. Tennessee looks better. That's why they're an 11-point favorite. They just got to show up and do it.
I'm hesitant.
And prove they can do it against Florida.
I agree they're better. I don't know if it's 11 points better in this game.
I would hammer Florida on the money line on that one.
And the idea, so the teams that have performed well against Florida, Kentucky and then South Florida, were able to run the football. Tennessee can't run the football. That's number one.
Well, especially now their starting running back may be out. He was out after a second game.
Even with him, I haven't seen enough. And South Florida entered this past week as a 24.5-point underdog, and they had lost 19 of 23 games with head coach Jeff Scott there. And they punted 1 time because they ran the football. They converted 8 of 15 third downs, 2 for 2 on 4th down, and they ran for 286 yards on the Florida defense. That's how you beat them. That's the storyline of the week. Does Heupel beat them running their offense?
Cedric Tillman needs to be healthy, too.
Headlines and Buffalo next.
If you're looking to place a bet on a game today or a futures wager, head to OutKick's Odds Finder. OutKick.com/odds is where you're going to find spreads, totals, and moneyline odds for every upcoming game. And I love it because it's super easy to navigate. Bookmark OutKick.com/odds and make OutKick bets a part of your daily sports betting routine. For bets decided by season-long results, check out OutKick's Futures Finder at OutKick.com/futures. Just select your state and place your bet. It's that simple. And similar to the Futures Finder, the Prop Bet Finder allows you to search by player, team, or game for any sport. Check out OutKick.com/props, and from there, click the Odds tab. You're going to go directly to the sportsbook to make your bet. Boost your game day experience with OutKick bets. OutKick.com/betting. Get the edge with OutKick bets.
Tonight, Monday Night Football, 2 games for you with the Bills and the Titans kicking off at 6:15 Central, 7:15 Eastern. And then roughly 30 to 45 minutes later in Philly, the Eagles and Vikings take place. So we'll see around halftime that game kick off on ABC and Titans-Bills on ESPN. Koharski's going to join us live from Buffalo coming up with the latest news, notes, headlines, the scene setter, which right now the scene there is a complete cluster trying to get into the stadium. It's not an easy stadium to get to if you've been to Buffalo, if you've been to Highmark Stadium, or I believe that's what they're still calling it now. It's one way in, one way out, at least from what I remember being there a few years back. And most of the recent matchups, the Bills have been here in Nashville. Paul's going to join us from the stadium, though, over the next couple of hours. We'll preview this game in its entirety, in depth, and both matchups will tell you who will win and why. Chad, the biggest takeaway for me on the college weekend, maybe this sounds odd because I think most people would agree with this, but to the level I'm going to say it, Georgia is by far the best team in the country. And I don't think it's close. They don't have a ton of penalties. Alabama will allow you to stay in games longer. Their defense, if you want an example of how good their defense has been, I look to Oregon. Oregon mustered 3 points against Georgia's defense. 13 straight possessions the Oregon offense scored after playing Georgia that spanned 7 quarters. And they beat BYU this weekend in a physical matchup. Watching Oregon as of late compared to what we saw them do against Georgia, to me, tells me more about what Georgia's capable of. They're a better team in like all caps. Last year it was the defense that was so phenomenal, and that allowed the offense. The perception was they weren't explosive, even though we saw in the college football playoff they were. And Stetson Bennett came out of the shell, so to speak, then. This year, Stetson's a Heisman finalist right now, and he may be the favorite to win it. I mean, I don't know what the odds are right now at DraftKings. To me, my vote would go to him based on how efficient he's been and how he and the entire offense has been leading the way the same manner that the defense has the last 2 years. They're that good.
It's crazy how the odds have not caught up with that because he's still pretty underwhelming underdog for the Heisman, and he's been terrific. He's been maybe the best player in college football. I don't get it. Georgia,
I think it's great money right now.
Georgia is heads and shoulders above everyone else right now. I completely agree. They also have the most tantalizing talent in all of football, Brock Bowers. He is the most surefire, sure-handed, great athlete, great player in the game in terms of you want to get the ball to someone on 3rd or 4th down in a big moment, I'm throwing it to that guy every time. They have inventive ways of getting him the ball. You don't see a lot of tight ends that you're trying to hand the ball off to and get it to them out in space. Brock Bowers can be that guy for you also. I was so thoroughly impressed with how thorough they were of dispatching South Carolina on the road so quickly. Stetson Bennett was throwing up early in that game on the sideline, and they're just dismantling. He's throwing up to start the game in Columbia, and with 8 minutes remaining in the game, he's signing autographs for Georgia fans who made the trip with 8 minutes left in the 4th quarter on the road in an SEC game.
Taking selfies.
I mean, just ridiculous how good this Georgia team is. Amazing how quickly Kirby Smart has got them to this point where, I mean, they're my favorite right now to repeat in college football, and I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, so Georgia, their run game has still not even caught rhythm yet. They haven't found their rhythm in their run game. That's how efficient they've been through the air. They now have 571 and 547 total yards in their Power 5 games this season, and those totals are higher than any total they posted last season offensively. This team, top to bottom, is better than the one last year. And this is the same team that had 15 players drafted in the NFL. That's absurd to me. But it was going back, the best I could tell, and by the way, I think Georgia could have named their score. They could have won by 60 if they wanted to. But winning by 41, 48-7 is the final in South Carolina. It's the 3rd largest margin that South Carolina has lost a conference game by, based on what I could find. They lost by 45 to A&M in the COVID season of 2020, and they lost to Florida 56-6 in 2008. And again, this could have been unmerciful, based if Georgia wanted it to be, and you could already argue it was. Spencer Rattler's bad. I don't want to completely judge him, though, based on what we saw against Georgia. Spencer Rattler will be judged on where South Carolina finishes in the pecking order of Missouri, Vanderbilt,
Tennessee, Kentucky.
Yeah, where are they in that?
Can they beat? Really, I think it's can Spencer Rattler beat Kentucky or Tennessee?
Yeah, well, and I think it is fair to ask: is Spencer Rattler the quarterback by the time they play those teams?
Surely he will be.
He was awful. I mean, he is awful to start the year.
I think Georgia's going to make a number of quarterbacks look awful, but yes, that was my big question for South Carolina. Can he be the difference? Because a year ago, they threw out 4 guys, and none of them were SEC caliber quarterbacks. So, okay, here's a guy who was last year's preseason Heisman Trophy favorite. He's got some talent. He showed some of it at Oklahoma before it went downhill. Can he be the difference? I think through 3 weeks, while their offense looked okay at Arkansas, when they were down a lot and they closed the gap a little bit, I'd say the answer that we've received is a resounding no. He's not going to be a huge difference for South Carolina. By the way, Georgia's schedule the rest of the way, I mean, who's going to challenge them? At Kentucky.
Their defense, yeah.
November 19th. I'm just looking down the list. They get Tennessee at home. Tennessee did some things against that great defense here, but that game was not close. After Tennessee took a 7-0 lead, it wasn't close from that point on. But they get Kent State at Missouri, Auburn at home, Vanderbilt at home. Bye week, they get Florida, Tennessee at home, at Mississippi State. I mean, at Kentucky.
What it takes
is really the one weird road trip I'm circling and saying maybe they win by 2 or 3 touchdowns in that game and that's it.
Well, but we were trying to play it up last year as best we could when 2 unbeaten teams met in Athens.
And Kentucky gave a game for a half.
For a half.
Yeah.
But that's how close it was. And basically, the same guys are back on offense minus Wan'Dale Robinson going against that Georgia defense. And the Georgia offense is better going against the Kentucky defense, which is always very consistent. The thing about Georgia, though, is you go through their schedule. Like if we did the same thing for Alabama, and granted we're going to have more SEC West teams that we're going to be putting them up against, and while it certainly doesn't happen this week against Vandy, where Vandy's, a 41, 42-point
They
underdog?
open as a 43-point underdog, but smart money went in on the doors immediately because it's pushed it down to 40 from 43.
A nice win for the Doors on the road against Northern Illinois.
Yeah, where they were down 28-7, and I thought it was about to be 35 or 28-14. I thought it was about to be 35-14.
And here's the difference between Georgia and Bama, schedule-wise, aside from East versus West and all that. Alabama makes some very just boneheaded mistakes that you normally don't see from a Saban coach team throughout the course of a year. We saw it early last year, and I thought they would, wean themselves off of the delay of game penalties. Or, for the longest time, the running joke was the refs don't call holding against Bama's offensive line because they have it out for – and this takes place now on the regular.
I will say they should have called holding on the biggest play of Bama's season because it was a clear hold on Bryce Young's little breakout performance on the run against Texas that set up the game winner.
We're seeing on the routine
I know where you're going with this.
double-digit flags and muff punts or whatever that you look around and you go, man, this allows teams to stay in it because you need – if you're going to compete with Georgia, Georgia has to allow you to stay around. Either by a big play being called back because of an offensive penalty where you're, instead of gaining 43 yards, you back it up 15 for whatever it might be. Or you have a kickoff and a fumble that allows you a short field where you're able to cash it in. The same way A&M beat Bama last year, where you had to have it in every facet, and it still came down to a final drive where a quarterback stepped up and made some plays and you kick a game-winning field goal. That's how you beat Georgia, but the problem is Georgia doesn't allow you that. That's the difference between the two.
No, and I still, even with Alabama's issues right now, I still look at Alabama and the schedule ahead of them and the way other teams in the SEC are playing, and I think if they play like they did against Texas, Tennessee can beat them in Knoxville. Certainly could happen. Would not predict that to happen. They'd have to play a bad game, and Tennessee would have to play well to win. But it is conceivable that Alabama could lose. I don't find it conceivable that Georgia's going to lose this regular season. I just don't. Now, sports have a funny way of sneaking up on us, and when we think something's a certainty, it's not. And then something weird happens. I just don't see it with Georgia. And we are now saying exactly what we thought in the preseason. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, put those three teams in a class to themselves. And I think Georgia right now is in their own class. And then maybe it's Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan in another little group. Then you got to go down a little bit further. Hutton, the intrigue in the SEC is the round robin of the next level. It's Tennessee and Florida. It's Kentucky taking on Tennessee. It's LSU. It's all of these teams in that next little layer, A&M and whoever they're playing. That's the fun of the sport because that's where actual parity exists. These other teams, they're playing a different sport than some of the other teams in their conference. It's ridiculous how good Georgia is and how quickly Kirby Smart got there. I heard someone on Saturday say, you know, it even took Kirby Smart 5 years to win it all. And I'm thinking, it was talking about patience. You got to preach patience. It was about Nebraska. You got to be patient with the next coach. It took Kirby Smart 5 years to win a national title. I'm thinking that's remarkable that he got Georgia to this Bama level,
and
even
what they
better
were doing
than
along
Bama.
the way, right?
I mean, in that short amount of time. So
And their loss to not winning a second title in that span was to Bama,
yes,
who's the bar.
It's insane how good of a job he's done at his alma mater, and
that's why
it's not ending anytime soon.
That Kirby Smart is the reason why Jimbo Fisher should have much more pressure on him than what I am led to believe, despite the $90 million buyout or whatever it is. Money is no object in College Station when it comes to this. That's why I think the win over Miami was massive for him. Because if you're comparing, like, who can be the next Georgia, it should be A&M. Saban's mentioning them in recruiting and in NIL, and he comes from the same cloth as Saban. And they have the head-to-head matchup where Jimbo has him and has the win the same way Kirby does. We don't see that either. That should be the parallel. So that's the bar that Jimbo's facing in College Station that I think that he cranked up a lot based on what Appalachian State did.
Yeah, I mean, even, their favorite this week against a top 10 team in Arkansas, they still have the defense to have a great season, to have the season they wanted. Yeah. Their offense is just so bad. But you're right. If you're looking at the divisions, and I know this is going to change with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, but A&M has a chance to be a problem for Bama, and that's why Nick Saban's saying this. I look at the East, though, with Georgia. I think Tennessee could be a nuisance to Georgia. I think Florida could be a nuisance. I don't think either one of those programs are going to be a problem for Georgia anytime soon, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Tennessee's system could trip up a great team at some point, and they're recruiting to a level where they're going, not a problem, but a nuisance to someone like Georgia. Florida the same way. A&M's the one who could rise up and be something bigger than that. But of those coaches I just mentioned, Jimbo Fisher is doing the worst job on field. Of any of those programs trying to contend with Alabama and Georgia that's trying to get the requisite talent to do so, Jimbo Fisher has performed the worst in on-field coaching duties. Next to Josh Heupel, next to Billy Napier early on. You name the program that's you would think is on the rise right now. I'm amazed at how bad his offense is, and that is his offense.
Well, and let's rewind a bit because Georgia started winning at this clip without the reasoning for why we're not seeing it out at A&M. The reason for A&M is, well, Jimbo Fisher's got to find his quarterback. It's time to bring in the 5-star, which they have, but it's time to see the 5-star on the field and develop, from the high school 5-star to the college 5-star. Georgia's been winning at this clip prior to anything that we've seen this year from Stetson Bennett, right? The knock on Georgia was, man, they're winning in spite of him. They're winning with a game manager, fourth quarter, suffocate you offensively, best defense we've ever seen type level, and they're going to win titles based on the sheer 5-stars around the QB. That's not the case anymore, and there's no knock on Stetson Bennett because he's an amazing story. But it took him a while before he actually got the chance to play based on other 4 and 5 stars ahead of him that earned the right to play based on where they were recruited and the expectations that came with it, compared to the walk-on that they asked to leave and then asked to come back. The whole storyline and dynamic is very similar to A&M in terms of that description of how A&M's trying to find the quarterback and they haven't been able to find it. They had Rattler leave. Now they've not Rattler, that Haynes King got hurt. Then they have Calzada leave.
Yep.
Then Haynes King's back, but yet Max Johnson's the transfer. You know, the best quarterback we may not have even seen yet, and it just takes time for them to actually turn things over to him. And then you hit pay dirt with experience.
Yes, but again, I'm not letting Jimbo off the hook here because he's got to do a better job of developing an offense that helps your quarterback out. It's not just the lack of talent at quarterback.
It should be through the run.
They've got a 5-star guy waiting. I mean, he's got to do a better job of helping. The whole structure is broken. Anyone who watches A&M offensively, I can't even tell what they're trying to do at times because organizationally something is off. And that falls on the feet of the head coach first, especially the head coach who's in charge of your offense.
Coming up, we'll switch gears and talk NFL, but just to recap a question I had asked about Stetson Bennett and the Heisman odds. Right now, he's 4th in the country in Heisman odds at plus 1,200. Your leaders are still the same when we started, except Caleb Williams has climbed up the ladder, and he's been excellent too.
USC looks really good.
They look great. Stroud is currently your favorite at plus 200, followed by Caleb Williams, then Bryce Young at plus 400, and then you get to Stetson Bennett, who's ahead of Dylan Gabriel, J.J. McCarthy, Will Anderson, and others. Hendon Hooker, by the way, Chad, plus 4,000.
That's a nice long shot.
They need him to change those odds this week.
Well, Hendon Hooker really hasn't been as good as he was a year ago so far. I mean, he needs to pick it up. He's not been bad.
Well, he's about to hit the national stage, though.
He said, he's like, I have not performed up to my own expectations, so it's time to improve, even though Tennessee's offense looks pretty good so far. Almost 700 yards of offense against Akron on Saturday. Different beast, though, against the Gators. This is not the Akron Zips coming to town.
Coming up, we head to Buffalo. Koharski joins us, and we recap Week 2 across the NFL with the Dolphins' comeback win over the Ravens. We'll discuss what the Cardinals did in Vegas, where they hit the jackpot in the second half, and then overtime with the takeaway and return for a touchdown, game over. The Jags shut out the Colts. We were discussing earlier what this means for Indy, having laid an egg, and not just an egg, getting shut out by the team that kept you out of the postseason a year ago. And we give you an in-depth preview of Titans and Bills, Eagles and Vikings. All of that is straight ahead on OutKick 360.
Hey, listen, if you missed my show, don't at me. I've got you covered. Take a look. I did not at the time know the name Tua Tagovailoa. I had no idea who this guy was. So this guy comes in and replaces Jalen Hurts, a kid who had led them to a national championship, I think the year before, or was certainly the quarterback. Touchdown, boom. Alabama wins a national championship. Ever since then, I have thought to myself, this guy too has got something that normal people don't have. This guy too is special. He hasn't been special yet in the NFL, but all of a sudden, Tua time has, weapons. All of a sudden, Waddle, not Tommy Waddle, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill are dangerous dudes. Tua's got some guys. A lot of talking in the offseason. I am not mad about the University of Texas spending $280,000. Let me say that again. $280,000 on Arch Manning and 8 others recruiting visit. $280,000. Let me go through some of the things that they did. A 5-star hotel. The Queen stayed at the Four Seasons Austin. They spent $50,000. $46,696 on 34 rooms for recruits, family members, UT coaches, and staff. The rate was $419. Join me 9 to 11 Eastern Time at OutKick.com.
Don't miss a thing and stay up to date with all things Tommy Lahren is Fearless by following OutKick on Instagram and Twitter. But if you did miss something, don't worry, we've got you covered. But in their apology, the party planners said they were just a little bit overzealous and wanted residents to feel the strippers' enthusiasm and energy. What do you think? Did this deserve an apology?
It's weird. If you hire a stripper for a kindergarten kid, the Democrats applaud it. But if you hire a stripper for an old veteran, this doesn't work out. You know who wasn't complaining, Tommy? All of those nurses who are usually getting groped and grabbed by these dirty old men. There's no victim in this crime. There is absolutely no victim. And I'm not just saying that because I look like a guy who gets paid in singles. I'm saying that because this is ridiculous.
Well, it was a Taiwanese nursing home, so I don't know how this would have gone over. I don't know, over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I feel like this probably has already happened, but I keep thinking about these veterans, these older residents there suffering from dementia and other disabilities. And you know what? Just let them enjoy themselves. If this is what's going to, make their lives better, more complete, I say just let them have fun. We know the whole my body, my choice thing is largely lost on liberals worldwide when it comes to the COVID never-ending series of vaccines. Yet, in a surprising, logical, and wise move, the UK Health Security Agency, based on guidance from UK's Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, will no longer offer COVID vaccines to children ages 5 to 11. It's clear from the incredibly low child vax numbers in both the UK and the USA that parents aren't about it. And it's not because they're anti-vax either. The COVID vaccine is not the same as measles, mumps, and rubella, which have been time-tested, studied, and charted. And P.S., most kids already had COVID, and the natural immunity is far stronger than however many shots you want to jab in their arms. Tune in Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern on OutKick.com when I'll be joined by Betsy DeVos, the former United States Secretary of Education under President Trump.
OutKick 360 from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Monday Night Football tonight in Buffalo, the first of two kickoffs as the Bills host the Titans, followed by the Eagles and the Vikings. That's where Paul Koharski is on his way to Highmark Stadium as we speak. He joins us from his Uber. Traffic is a nightmare today there. That's no surprise based on the ingress and egress, as they like to say in stadium lingo. Big night this evening for the Titans on the road, trying to avoid the 0-2 start. Meanwhile, the Bills, the heavy favorite in the AFC. PK, hope you're doing well.
The struggle is real. It is a nightmare getting in here. I gave myself so much time, and I am not close. I'm not close. Look, I mean, does that look like a stadium to you?
Are you, at least you've got tailgaters. You're close enough to have people tailgating for the game.
That's part of the issue is they know how to tailgate in Buffalo, in northern New York, and they do it well.
At what point, Paul, do you get out of the car and walk? Like, what distance are you right now from the stadium?
Yeah, well, I maybe could have done it at a certain point, but I really was not in good enough proximity. And my driver and I miscalculated, and so we got kind of close coming from one direction, and then we got sent all the way past, and now we're doing the approach from a completely other direction.
This looks like pure
Complete
misery to me. This is my hell.
yeah.
Being stuck in a ride share and you're stuck in traffic. I would just get out and start. I could be 3 miles from the destination. Like, you know what? At least I'll be moving. I'm just going to start walking towards that destination. So God be with you, Paul.
Hey,
well,
Paul.
at least I won't be sitting in the box for 5 hours.
Well, that's also fair. Coming up, we will go heavy into Titans and Bills. But let's recap a bit just from your perspective. Chad and I went through it to start the show. Amazing day across the NFL where the Dolphins come back down 21 in the fourth quarter. They win on the road where Tua and the speed on the offense does wonders this year with Mike McDaniel calling plays against a solid Baltimore defense. Meanwhile, the Cardinals had no business. They were on life support. I mentioned to Chad, I was listening on my drive to downtown for TV obligations. I was listening to the Cardinals radio broadcast where they stopped themselves, where the halftime adjustments is what they meant to say, and they said, can a coaching change? And they stopped and said, can a coaching adjustment help them in the second half, trailing 20-0? Then you have the Jets trailing 30-17 with under 2 minutes to play, coming back to win on the road in Cleveland. Phenomenal day with some comebacks, but also some collapses, also with the Colts on the road in Jacksonville. Your overall takeaway of everything you took in yesterday?
I signed up for a free trial of Fubo, which I have to cancel this week in order to get, and just a Fubo email just popped up on my screen. In order to be able to watch Red Zone, is well worth it for the afternoon. I thought Tua, of everybody, his stock went up the most. I don't know how much he's going to be able to do what he did yesterday, but just phenomenal work with that speed. And reading what Mike McDaniel told Peter King about just kind of F it. They had an F it play, and we wanted to see how they dealt with adversity. Certainly dealt with it fantastically well. Arizona did a great job, and that was a lot of Kyler Murray, but I still have some serious doubts about Cliff Kingsbury.
Yes.
They on the 2-point conversion at the end that tied it, they took a delay of game after a timeout from the other side, and he was still so then you're changing the play, obviously, because you're pushed back. He's still frantically talking into the headset while Kyler Murray's going to the line of scrimmage. I mean, it did not look like a smooth operation. You've got to get a play call in and be settled and calm. And they were not settled and calm. The only thing that bailed them out is that Kyler Murray is anything but settled and calm when he's taken 21 seconds and running 85 yards on the previous 2-point conversion. So I think they've got problems, even though that was a fantastic comeback. And Jets, that is such an improbable comeback. Mike Sando did an incredible thing. He compared it, there are 7 consecutive decisions, they say, that have to be made wrong in a row for a plane to crash. It's a little harsh, but he went through 7 consecutive decisions in that Jets Cleveland game that had to kind of go in the right direction for the Jets, starting with Kareem Hunt running out of bounds with 2:02 left instead of letting those 2 seconds tick off. And look, I've not been a big proponent of guys not scoring, but if Chubb lays down on that 1st and 10 run where he scored with from the 12, they could have run the clock down to about 21 seconds, hit a field goal to go up by 2 scores with 21 seconds left. It would have been virtually impossible for them to lose. Cleveland didn't manage the end of that game very well. Since 2000, teams leading by 13 points with between 2 minutes and 1:30 left were 201-0. And Cleveland has chipped away at that record.
There had been, since that time, 2,229 consecutive games played before we've had a team trailing by 13 or more come back in the final 2 minutes. I mean, it's been a long time, and Cleveland shows you why. And I'm with you. I'm watching this game live. It was one of my upset picks, and I'm watching it going, man, that touchdown does it, right? You have the touchdown run with under 2 minutes to play. I wasn't thinking at the time, just slide down and burn clock. I'm thinking, take the 31-17 lead. and then they missed the extra point. So that also screwed them on that too.
Well, the other thing, the onside kick. I mean,
Yeah, it was perfect.
they lost the onside kick.
Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. A couple of other takeaways. The Colts and the abysmal performance, just knowing the backstory of the entire offseason discussion. It's been about how they played and performed in Jacksonville last year in the final game, where everyone's pointing, from the head coach to the owner to everyone's pointing to Carson Wentz as to why they lose that game and don't step up in a big moment. And to go back down in week 2 after tying the Texans, to go back down to Jacksonville in week 2 and to not score a point is every indication that I need of some offseason failures from Ballard to Reich on down.
I'm not a quick trigger guy. You guys know that. But I was thinking last night, if I'm Jim Irsay, I would have gone to bed seriously thinking about making a move today. And I would have woken up seriously thinking about making a move today. I mean, division's wide open for him.
Yeah.
You know, odds are against the Titans tonight. But even if the Titans win tonight up here, you know, where is any suggestion of all of this hope? And even if they recover, for them to start this way, and they've got a bad game coming up this weekend, the Chiefs, I believe.
Yes.
For them to start this way after an off season of upheaval and change and all of that. Matt Ryan looks horrible. That offensive line, which I've harped on, and people, I have to give Armando trash about it when we talk this week, you know, claims the offensive line is an advantage for them. The offensive line was horrible against Jacksonville, which is not one of the best fronts in the league. I mean, Indianapolis couldn't have played worse yesterday, I don't think. And I mean, I'm not telling you anybody anything they don't know with a shutout.
And knowing that just how bad it's been, it's not like it's a close and you know, there's a turnover, something doesn't bounce their way. Jacksonville has won 15 home games, only 15 home games since 2018. And 5 of those 15 are to the Colts. So we know the history there. But how they've started the season after they finished with consecutive losses to the Raiders and Jags, and knowing that they changed quarterbacks. Paul, they have gone into the fourth quarter of each of their first 2 games, trailing by a combined score of 44-3. And that is just awful. That's not just, they're contenders for the AFC South, everything's good. They're not contenders for the AFC South right now, despite their 0-1-1 record, because of how bad their offense is.
And where's Jonathan Taylor in all of this? I mean, they have to construct things with one of the 3-4 best running backs in the league. A lot of people would say the very best running back in the league, and they start the season not having figured that out. That's an off-season problem spilling into the season. And, you know, people are going to say, well, they're in better shape than a lot of teams at 0-1-1, but sure doesn't feel like it.
Paul, a team that's 0-2, Cincinnati. What did you make of them going to Dallas and losing to Cooper Rush and the Cowboys?
Terrible. I mean, only 2 0-2 teams in the AFC. Titans could join them tonight. The Bengals and the Raiders, who both come into the season with super high hopes. And Burrow under assault again. And, you know, I was reading some analytics stuff that, you know, there's a graph out that kind of maps how much of it's quarterback's fault, how much of it is the line's fault. And he falls into the category where a lot of it's his fault and a lot of it's the line's fault. They've got to figure that out quickly. I mean, he's got the weapons and they made it work last year, but teams are coming at them in a way where they're just not getting away with the stuff that they got away with last year. And they've got to fix it and fix it fast, or, you know, all of us who picked them to win the division and be a playoff team again are going to look foolish for not leaning the other way and buying the idea that the team that loses the Super Bowl doesn't make it back to the playoffs. And, you know, you see him shaking. He's so pretty so to speak. But when he's sitting there on the ground shaking his head or on the bench shaking his head, it doesn't matter how good looking he is. It doesn't look good.
Yeah, I mean, on average, he is sacked this season every 7.5 or 8 dropbacks per pass rush. I mean, it's 13 times to begin the season, 6 this past week against Dallas. They had no answer for Micah Parsons. And knowing, even when they possess the football and he's not getting sacked, they held the ball for 21 of the 30 minutes in the second half and scored just 1 touchdown. They have started really slow, and part of it's up front of the offensive line. They now have to pick up the pace. They will travel to New York this week. They face the Jets this Sunday. Then they have back-to-back games against the Dolphins and the Ravens before they're on the road against New Orleans. So they're coming off of back-to-back losses where they got to face Trubisky and Rush as the 2 quarterbacks. And now they're entering a stretch where it is time to put up or shut up, or the season's over before it gets going. And it may be over anyway, because I don't think we see Burrow survive the season not on the healthy roster. I think he ends up on IR with as many times as he's getting hit, because he's been sacked 13 times. He's getting hit far more options than just those dropbacks that I'm referencing. And it's the one area that they tried to upgrade, that they considerably upgraded on paper. Lyle Collins has been really bad for them, but he's not the only issue up front. It's something that I felt like they had a great idea of what they were going to fix, and they have not been able to do it. And it may be another example of a Super Bowl hangover that will be their own fault, knowing that this is the one area you've got to correct if you've got a franchise QB. And the only other quarterback in recent memory that has been sacked at this rate, you got to go down to Houston and what we saw from David Carr, the sack rate that currently Joe Burrow's facing in Cincinnati.
They got to go Mixon and quick game as much as they can, and that's probably easier than it sounds.
Paul, best of luck in the car. When we come back, we're going to switch gears, and then we will reconnect with you, hopefully, in the next 30 minutes or so as you get into the stadium. We'll see. We'll see what your Uber driver is capable of.
Got to be considering getting out of that car and walking to the stadium at this point, because I have not even seen you move since you've been on with us.
Yeah. Chad, look, here's the front view, Chad. You see any stadium?
Have you moved?
Yeah, it looks like I see the exit ramp. That's all I see.
Yeah, my point being, I don't know what good it's doing if you're not going to move. I mean, I'm asking, how much have you moved since you've been on with us?
Not a lot.
Could have been moving a lot more had you been walking. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
yeah, had I been walking, I couldn't talk to you.
You have a couple of hours until kickoff, so maybe you'll get in by the time the fireworks start. I do want to join. You will join us coming up in about 20 minutes. I'm going to go heavy into the matchups tonight because it's a pivotal game in the AFC for both teams.
Yeah,
Buffalo's on top. Buffalo's on top of the AFC, and this has been a team that has their number in recent years. This is a team in the Titans that has kept Buffalo from hosting playoff games. And from the Titans' perspective, it's too early to throw in the towel if they lose tonight. But it is a big game for a confidence level of a team that's in desperate need of some. So, Paul, hang in there, and best of luck if you have to hoof it.
Thank you.
All
Let's talk more.
Yeah, we'll check in with Paul in about 20 minutes or so and get an update. And I'll give you my setup, Chad, of this game. I was asked last night how I would set up the impact that this game has on both teams, the meaning of it as we go into October. Not necessarily what we'll look back on in January, but how it sets up both teams a couple of weeks from now, win or lose. We'll get into that when we come back. Some injuries of note from week 2 that could affect your fantasy football team or just your favorite team in general. And there's also a big suspension to discuss. That's all straight ahead on OutKick 360.
So this is a question I like to ask veterans. It's another opportunity to kind of shine a light on America, but also on the flip side of kind of and how some people are ungrateful. I think with young people my age and younger, they take a lot of things for granted, number one. And 2, because to your previous point, life has been so easy, they don't seem to understand that things happened before them, but their lives were very difficult. And a lot of people paid a high price to be here. You're one of them. You know a lot of people who are one of them. and so on and so on. So when you hear young people trash America as a terrible country or a horrific place to live, what instinctually do you want to respond when you hear someone just acting like this is a terrible place?
I have to keep my instincts in check. Quick story, true story. Right after getting back from Somalia, we were invited by the future mayor of New York, D.C., just a handful of us, to go to New York City and to lead the Veterans Day parade in November. By the way, the future mayor of New York City was Rudy Giuliani. And Giuliani invited me and about 5 of the Rangers to show up and to start the Veterans Day parade and to walk it down Fifth Avenue. And while we were in uniform and getting ready to stage at the start of the Veterans Day parade, no exaggeration, we were accosted in the subway by people who were screaming at us and spitting on us and calling us baby killers. And all of this is because of what they saw in the news about Somalia. And my buddy next to me went berserk and almost killed somebody in the subway. And I had to grab him and remind him, he doesn't know, the guy that's assaulting you right now doesn't know what you've gone through and will never understand what you've gone through. Now, to my buddy, Tim Pringle, that didn't make it any better because he's being spit on and accosted in the subway in New York. But I also reminded him he doesn't have to know and he will never understand because he lives in a country where you have done for him what he didn't have to do for himself. And it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, but just remind yourself tonight, Tim, he doesn't know, he will never understand because you have done for him what he didn't have to do for himself. And when people make disparaging comments about America, when Americans make disparaging comments about America, I simply think to myself, you're just putting your ignorance on display. You don't know what you don't know, and you're broadcasting to the world what you don't know because you have never had to be in the shoes or the boots of the guys and gals that I served with. And if you did, you would never make these comments. Because let's just be honest, America is not perfect, not even close. But I've been all over the world, and there is not another nation on earth, not even close to the freedoms that you have in America. So complain all you want, but you can't go anywhere else and find better, not even close.
That is a great answer. It's an answer that I like to hear. The reason I asked that is I went to college kind of when the Iraq War was not in a great place, I think is what would be a way to say. It wasn't as bad as 06, 07. And I was a poli-sci guy, so I had classes with young people, and they talk about like American soldiers were over there like slaughtering kids or just stuff like that. I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. And not only that, you're saying those things from the air-conditioned campus of the University of Wisconsin. You're never going to get on a plane and fly over there, but you'll critique, you'll judge people you don't know. And that always drove me up the wall. And I feel like, unfortunately, that anti-American mindset seems to be getting more and more common.
Notable injuries from week 2 as we continue on OutKick 360. Ravens wide receiver Devin Duvernay placed in concussion protocol. He left the game for Baltimore yesterday against Miami. That's important. How good was this game? This game started with a 103-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Duvernay. The Giants, they lose Leonard Williams with a knee issue. He's been ruled out after yesterday's game against the Panthers. Don't know the significance of that when I say ruled out for yesterday's game. He did not return. Cardinals and James Conner, he left the game with an ankle issue. That's a big loss for Arizona in their backfield. Jacoby Brissett said post-game that he was dealing with an ankle injury in his matchup against the Jets. Although he played throughout the fourth quarter on that bum ankle, and it should be okay for him moving forward. But again, he's their backup. That would leave Josh Dobbs if something can't happen with Brissett, or something did flare up this week with Brissett on the ankle. And there's a short week for Cleveland as they're getting set to face Pittsburgh. The Broncos, Jerry Jeudy left with a shoulder injury. He did not return against the Texans for the Broncos in the first quarter. Pat Surtain also left the game with a shoulder issue. Dalton Schultz, the franchise tag tight end in Dallas, he missed the game-winning drive with a knee issue. So we'll see how that progresses. 2 suspensions of note. Mike Evans suspended for 1 game for the altercation yesterday where he's on the bench, turns around, comes back after Marshawn Lattimore was jawing with Bruce Arians and others. You find it funny how Bruce is roaming the sidelines, right?
Bruce is not a coach, correct?
He's not.
It's
He's an
so
advisor.
weird that he's there in full coach regalia and on the sideline.
I pointed this out in the joint practice here in Nashville. It's just he's not invisible, which is usually how the quote-unquote advisor role is. He's clearly...
He's up in a suite somewhere during the game.
Yeah. He's down there doing more than just watching games. Nonetheless, there was jawing back and forth. There is a history between the two. Mike Evans has already been suspended a game, I believe back in 2017 when Jameis Winston was the quarterback for Tampa. Point being, this is a recurring theme, and I think Evans is lucky it's only 1 game. It's a big game, however, where Tampa's depleted at wide receiver already, and they're getting set to face Green Bay at home, their first home game this coming Sunday afternoon. That game is on Fox. The other suspension that's just been announced through the league, the NFL has suspended Chiefs linebacker Willie Gay for the next 4 games for violating the personal conduct policy. He's eligible to return October 17th following the game against Buffalo, one of their best defenders. He's made some big plays for them in the last several outings for Kansas City. And, Chad, this stems from a February arrest, I believe, that's now coming down and affecting his season. So, again, he's out immediately for the next 4 games. And the big injury yesterday happens with Trey Lance. Breaks his ankle, done for the season. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, finishes the half throwing for over 100 yards and was very efficient. And San Francisco does what they do when Jimmy G's the quarterback. They win.
Very workmanlike game from Jimmy Garoppolo. 13 for 21, 154, a touchdown, no interceptions, I think.
Yeah, and there were struggles in the second half, but the majority of that straight off the bench.
They win going away. Look, they've got the best backup quarterback situation in the league. You know, regardless of what you think about Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not going to win you many games. He won't lose them either for that San Francisco team, and they've got a good roster, so they're right back on a miserable first week in the rain in Chicago, but
let's go a step
right back
further.
on a playoff path.
I think more than that, they can win the division and be hosting games.
Yeah,
I mean they can be one of the. I mean we asked the question, Armando, last week. Who do you trust in the NFC? That list is short, and knowing San Francisco's defense, knowing Deebo Samuel and the playmakers around, George Kittle should be coming back soon. Knowing all that and knowing Jimmy Garoppolo wins games for them, 31-17, now 32-17. The record's on par with what Tannehill's done with the Titans. Tannehill's won 1 or 2 more games than Garoppolo in the same time frame. Point being, they're one of the favorites now in the NFC. As crazy as that sounds, it has worked its way back around to Jimmy G running this offense, getting the reins. I mean, did you notice he was smiling?
Yeah.
He's smiling as he's in the huddle thinking, full circle, here we go.
He's thinking, I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm back. So, obviously, the big injury, though, Trey Lance, the broken ankle you had mentioned. Kyle Shanahan today was questioned about the play call to run Trey Lance up the middle in this game. He did not like the third question about whether or not he regretted the play call. And here is Kyle Shanahan.
Just because, I mean, you guys watch other teams in this league, and Buffalo does it all the time with their quarterback. It's pretty normal play. It's part of football, and it's unfortunate that he hurt his ankle on it.
Hopefully you guys could hear that.
He said, do you watch other teams in this league? He said Buffalo runs that same play all the time. Maybe you guys should watch more football. It's pretty common football play.
And knowing, I mean, seeing that's part of Trey Lance's game, right?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons he's in the game.
No issues with it whatsoever in that regard. And
Kyle Shanahan had a good answer. He said, anytime someone gets injured, I wish I didn't call the play. You know, you immediately regret the play call when you see someone get injured. And then he said, boy, you guys really want to keep asking about this, huh? It's a pretty common play. Do you watch other teams? Buffalo runs it all the time. That's a play that we've had success on. That's going to help us be successful.
Chad, I think you have to go back. In fact, I know. You have to go back to 2019 for the last time Trey Lance has started and finished 2 consecutive games as the starting quarterback. He played in 1 game at quarterback due to COVID in 2020, same as Dylan Radins. Last year, he started 2 games, but separate and apart from each other. This year, started week 1 and was terrible and then got injured in the first quarter. It's been a while. And now it's another year where it's not the same structure and storyline, but it's the same confidence level now of what we would have in Jordan Love to Aaron Rodgers. And I do not want to compare. I'm not trying to compare the talent level of Garoppolo and Rodgers, just the circumstance where they're better off with the other guy, no matter how much time has been invested or price tag has been invested in the guy that's backing them up.
No, I agree. And again, they find themselves with a soft landing because of not being able to find a trade partner for Jimmy Garoppolo.
More than that,
it's coming to this conclusion. So now they look like geniuses for this whole deal.
It's like getting hitting the whatever, the mushroom or whatever in Super Mario. You know, you get the bonus power.
Yeah, the green mushroom to go one up.
I don't know. If Jacob were here, we could ask him.
No, it's in Mario Brothers. I play this game at times because I have the old school Nintendo. It's a green mushroom that gives you the one up. It gives you an extra life.
I mean, that's what this feels like. It feels like an extra boost for a San Francisco team that was going to have to win ugly. And now they still do that to some extent, but it's not. I mean, they lost Elijah Mitchell. We've been down this road before last year, and they went on the road and won games in Green Bay, and then ultimately fall out of the postseason. But, I mean, this puts them right back in the mix. It puts them right back in the thick of things in their division with a Rams team that got back on track but nearly gave up a game to Atlanta yesterday. They were up 28-3, and Atlanta nearly pulled the 28-3 comeback. I think the division's wide open.
So what really sucks about this whole deal is Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers made the decision that Trey Lance was the better option, and they wanted to move forward with him. So we're going to have no real determination after this injury on whether or not that's the right move or what's going to be best. What we're going to have instead is just another referendum on Jimmy Garoppolo now moving forward, whatever happens with their season.
Well,
but you see what I'm saying? There's no real basis of comparison between the two, because if Jimmy Garoppolo stays healthy, then suddenly it's, well, he made it through the season, Trey Lance didn't. But if this happens, you almost want to see more of a body of work from Trey Lance at some point. And we're still going to have no idea.
What they've done, though, with Garoppolo taking the reduction in salary, keep in mind, there is a no trade clause, and there is a no tag clause. So they can't franchise tag him after this season either. He is a free agent after this year. He would have been contractually anyway had he not taken the reduction in money. Now he's getting the bonus money for games started. Davey Hudson told us it was like $350,000, reminding us of that per win. And it's more than just he gets bonus just based on playing time, starting games. And he gets to cash in with another team, and he gets to prove it now, albeit he's been on his own all offseason, practicing on his own, working out on his own in the team facility. But he comes into a structure that he already knows with playmakers around him that he knows well, and an offensive system that he's won in.
This coming from our buddy Barrett Salih. Did you know Texas A&M has fewer red zone visits than Iowa this season? 3-4.
Wow.
There's a stat for you.
Stats on Monday Night Football next on OutKick 360.
If you're looking to place a bet on a game today or a futures wager, head to OutKick's odds finder. OutKick.com/odds is where you're going to find spreads, totals, and moneyline odds for every upcoming game. And I love it because it's super easy to navigate. Bookmark OutKick.com/odds and make OutKick bets a part of your daily sports betting routine. For bets decided by season-long results, check out OutKick's Futures Finder at OutKick.com/futures. Just select your state and place your bet. It's that simple. And similar to the Futures Finder, the Prop Bet Finder allows you to search by player, team, or game for any sport. Check out OutKick.com/props, and from there, click the odds tab. You're going to go directly to the sports book to make your bet. Boost your game day experience with OutKick bets. OutKick.com/betting. Get the edge with OutKick bets.
Monday Night Football kicks off in a little over 2 hours with the Bills hosting the Titans. And then after that, on ABC, Eagles and Vikings as we see A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson go at it with the offensive firepower of both and what both possess. Glad you're with us for the final hour. Over the next hour, full previews of both games.
No Chris Berman on the call for that second game? Steve Levy, right?
Is it, yeah,
on the
Steve
second
Levy?
game?
No, the Titans have Steve Levy.
Steve Levy with the Titans.
And Orlovsky.
And then the A team with Buck and Aikman have Philly, Vikings.
Yes, on ABC.
I just love saying the name Chris Berman to get Paul fired up because I know he can hear me all the way up in Orchard Park, New York right now.
He's there. He joins us from the stadium. Paul, welcome in. And
Behold.
Great job on the hustle, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, he's
finally things opened up.
You're completely alone in the press box, Paul. That's nice.
No, I'm not down in the front row because I don't want everybody to have to hear me. So I came up here to where people dining or studying will have to hear me.
So I was asked last night, Paul, to kind of give an overall theme of the game, because I think we all agree it is very difficult to determine contenders versus pretenders in week 2 of a win or a loss, even at 0-2 now with the 7th team getting in the playoffs. So let's start there. But Buffalo and Tennessee last year lost on the same weekend in the playoffs. Bills fans, the media, the perception is the Bills lost because Josh Allen didn't have the football. And they changed the overtime rule for him this offseason. That's why they bowed out and they did not reach their full potential. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, they lost because their quarterback did have the football and gave it away 3 times. That's what the perception is of both of these quarterbacks. There has been a ton of talk about Josh Allen, and rightfully so. He's the contender for not just AFC and Super Bowl prowess for these teams, for the team he's playing on, but the individual awards as well. Meanwhile, no one's talking about Tannehill. The route for Derrick Henry and the Titans is Derrick Henry needs to get back to what he was in order for Tannehill to become any sort of player that we saw in 2020. So I'll set the game up by saying we don't know, based on win or loss, if the Titans are contending for the ultimate goal, which is Lombardi. But what I do know is this gives us a great reading of the overall confidence level of what they have in their wide receiving core and their quarterback tonight. Because I think the overall vibe is it's run game or bust, and it's got to be a lot more than that for them to come out of Buffalo with a win.
Well, I think the portrait you paint is totally fair of Tannehill and Allen in terms of how the seasons ended last year. And look, there's nobody in their right mind that would be choosing Tannehill over Allen at any point in the season. But when you're drawing the comparison is in the playoffs, and we know, about Tannehill's playoff struggles. What Tannehill doesn't get enough credit for is what he's done in the regular season. And in the last 2 regular seasons, when these teams have squared off head to head, granted both in Nashville, it's Tannehill's team who's come out with the victory. And so I don't think the Titans get enough credit for that in terms of the contender that they've been through the regular season. Now, their postseason failures are well documented, but I didn't see the Bills in either of those Super Bowls either. So people who chalk it up to being, a success or a failure on whether you get to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl or not, those people would have to say the Titans and the Bills fared the same. I think you and I and Chad would say that's ridiculous. And the Bills have had better playoff success, even if they're out in the same round in terms of competitiveness and advancement. And look, the Titans are going to have to do a good job against Josh Allen tonight. They didn't stop the run well in week 1 at all. Josh Allen is the main running impetus here. They don't want him to escape to his right. They've talked a lot in the past and again this week about hemming in a quarterback. They hate when their pass rushers fly by a quarterback. We won't see any of that. That makes for less kill shots, but maybe for more effective control of where he is in the pocket and limitations of what he can do. So his escapes will be, they hope, fewer than they are against some other teams. That doesn't mean 1 or 2 plays he can't kill them with, and that's what he needs to do. Titans are turning to Josh Gordon. Now, people are excited that they're admitting some lack of success with the wide receivers that they have on the roster. We don't know if they're going to put Cody Hollister down or just play a 6th. Kyle Phillips, I checked in with somebody today. They expect him to play like they always expect Hutton, a guy listed as questionable, to play. Is he somewhat limited by his shoulder injury? We don't know. And we don't know how much they'll give Josh Gordon because a guy in his first game, generally, we know the Titans play with limitations on that guy. We saw it with Traylon Burks last week.
I think all three of us expect the Titans to come out and play well.
Yes.
Because, look, the narrative with the Titans is this is a game where they play well. On the road, backs up against the wall a bit. This is a Mike Vrabel special in this game. Paul, a real chance. We talked about the narrative surrounding these two teams right now. It completely flips with the early narrative if the Titans go to Buffalo and win on Monday Night Football, even after a loss to the Giants at home in Week 1. You mentioned Josh Gordon being activated in this game. Am I speaking out of turn to say that you also expect the Titans to maybe not win, but play very well tonight in Buffalo?
No, I expect them to play well, but I expect the Bills to also play well. The Bills haven't lived up to their end of the bargain in some of these games that we're talking about. Certainly the COVID game 2 years ago, they didn't play well. Last year, they had a chance late at the goal line. Josh Allen slipped. Jeffrey Simmons was Jeffrey Simmons, and that ended the game late. But I don't think if the Titans win tonight, it'll be because the Bills play poorly. I think it'll be a game where both teams play well and the Titans find a way to win at the end, which is often their formula. I do think they bounce back from a bad game against a bad team, which is their MO. I think they'll play a lot cleaner and a lot better than they did last week. But I don't think we see the Bills play poorly tonight. I think it'll be two good teams. And I do think, unlike previous years, unlike last year, where the Titans bounced back from that opening day loss to Arizona, where they were overwhelmed and seemed unprepared. And we said, oh, they're going to Seattle. That's a tough game against a tough team. This is a much tougher scenario for them. The Bills are a better team. And I think the Titans aren't as good as they've been the last 2 years. I don't know what the status of Derrick Henry is, but he's not generally good at the beginning of the season. I think this offensive line could be overmatched. Where we haven't seen Aaron Brewer or Nicholas Petit-Frere against the front like this yet, and it could be a problem. And missing Christian Fulton against these receivers is certainly going to be an issue. The depth of cornerback is something that we've talked about, but Elijah Molden isn't here. Christian Fulton isn't here. You're getting deep into it against guys that gave the Titans the type of guys that gave the Titans a lot of trouble in McKenzie and Crowder, little guys who are the third and fourth receiver. And I wouldn't, they play plenty of 3 wide, some 4 wide. And I think those guys present some problems beyond Diggs and Davis, who's got a sprained ankle, but tremendous frontline receivers.
And Crowder is just that veteran savvy over the middle that I'm with you. He's like a third or fourth option at best after you get past Knox and everyone else at tight end. Maybe he's even further down than that. But a really good player with the Jets and beyond, and now he's in Buffalo making some savvy catches, at least in Week 1 against the Rams. But let's start with Stephon Diggs and the big play potential. I don't think completely healthy there's a corner on the Titans roster that can go one-on-one with him. Let's just start there. But knowing those matchups,
I'd like McCreary the best. I'd like McCreary there the best, which is saying something.
Exactly.
His second-round rookie as opposed to last year's first round.
Exactly. And they will. So I want to get to Downing and Kelly scheming up some things in the pass game that we saw last week, even with Hilliard out. But they got the one-on-one matchups, and again, we'll hit on that in a bit. But the matchups that we're going to see Allen try to get Buffalo into, they're going to go at Caleb Farley. I mean, it is written in bold, like graffiti on a wall, how much he played in the preseason based on how little he is factoring into the defense, except for injury. They're going right at him. And Farley, the last 2 first-round picks need to step up. The training wheels have to come off of Burks, and Farley needs to play up to the caliber because he's as healthy as he's going to be. He needs to play up to the caliber of what we were told and what they believe he was when they selected him out of Virginia Tech. This is a big matchup. They're going to try to scheme him one-on-one, just like the Titans are trying to go after the Bills' rookie 6th-round pick.
Yeah, and Farley talked confidently all week. He knew that Fulton was, doubtful at best, seeing his injury up close. He talked. Look, I give Farley credit. He's not hiding.
No.
In terms of things. He knows that the spotlight's on him. He knows he hasn't lived up to expectations. He's eager for a chance to do that. He broke his or he tore his ACL last year against the Bills, right?
Yeah, week 6. Yes, you're right.
And so there's some symmetry to what's going on here, and he sees this as a big chance at redemption. He didn't go so far as to say all that, but it was clear during the week last week that he knew that he's going to have a big role in this game, that it was fitting, that it was the Bills again, and all of that. And I think he works his ass off. I think he's got a good skill set, but I think there's a little bit of hesitancy to him sometimes. And certainly, they want to keep him away from McKenzie and Crowder. He's going to be outside, so I would think he's got Diggs and Davis far more often in this game, who are better. He's better suited to cover. And I think he'll be a big story tonight for sure. And like you're saying, these guys need their premier picks, who often have not risen to the occasion in broad terms in this specific scenario to be guys. I think if Caleb Farley and Treylon Burks aren't productive tonight, I think the Titans' chances are probably not particularly good.
Yeah, I agree. And, we saw even Fulton, their top corner, turning and get messed up, peeking back in the backfield a couple times, and then Sterling Shepard scoring on the big bomb last week. I think that's what worries you the most against this Bills offense, where if Daniel Jones is taking advantage of that in some way, shape, form, or fashion,
Josh Allen
will smoke them on that, especially moving to his right or staying in the pocket and stepping up and delivering the football. But the one-on-one matchups, Byard pointed it out during the week, the one-on-one matchups is what the game comes down to. There will be, we've gone 4 or 5 deep in receiving options. And then you have Allen who can run it, that he's their rushing attack. Simmons can certainly take a game over. Byard in pass games like this, Paul, he's won the 50-50 ball, where there's a batted ball in the air, he comes down with it, early possession, great field position, they capitalize on that. They need a spark early. That's the formula for them in games like this. And let's go back a week where we saw some really bad holding penalties, whether or not you want to, if everything being on the even playing field, it was a hold, was it not, it was called, and it held them back from some either big runs or maybe a first down conversion here or there. They got to catch the football. There's way too many drops a week ago, and the penalties cannot hold them back in an environment like this.
Yeah, I mean, they need to play clean, and they've got scouting reports on these officials. Some of that, strikes you as maybe a little first game nervousness. They got to help Petit Frere, I think, in passing situations. Here's another thing that I think could key this game, and is something a beat writer friend of mine up here in Buffalo talked about. They really like Taron Johnson, their nickelback. They list their nickel defense on their depth chart as their primary defense. They don't want to take him off the field, but I think the Titans might be better served here. And we've talked a lot about the 2 tight end potential of the Titans in terms of getting, and Jeff Swain played a little bit more than Austin Hooper last week. And he was targeted more than Austin Hooper, which we all don't like. But if they can get Taron Johnson off the field and make them go with Edmondson or Dotson, 2 players that they haven't even really clearly decided between, keep them in more of a base 4-3 defense with those bigger tight ends, that might be to the Titans' advantage. Either do that, or when they do have the smaller people on the field, you want to spread that out and run Derrick Henry against a more spaced out defense. I would think we'll see some of both of those things, but they can play personnel that they don't necessarily want to play.
I agree. And Leslie Frazier, it's a different scheme than what we saw a week ago from Wink Martindale against this Titans offense. They are way more patient with the Buffalo defense. Frazier doesn't bring a lot of heat. They play a lot of 2 safety look, and they're going to sit back and allow the Titans to play into their defense more than forcing the issue. That's why. Go ahead. Yeah.
That's a spot they're going to miss Dontrell Hilliard tonight.
Yes.
I don't see Hassan Haskins as a guy that can attack it the same way.
I agree.
Or Julius Chestnut, who I would like to throw to more than Haskins based on what I've seen, but neither of them are like Hilliard. And after Hilliard's 2 touchdowns last week on 3 catches, I mean, he was a real danger they're missing him tonight. Let's not forget about that.
No, yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up because they schemed him open and got him with a slower linebacker multiple times in this game last week, Hilliard. They've got – I'm ready for that next level of it's time to see Austin Hooper match up in that same scenario. We'll just look at the – Chig Okonkwo, but let's also look at the obvious. I mean, they have a 16th overall selection that needs to be on the field more, and more targets need to come his direction. I'm watching the league yesterday, Paul, and all these first-round picks from Drake London – to Garrett Wilson and others are making game-changing plays for their offense. In some cases, game-winning plays. Burks is capable of that, and it's time to just let him fly. I mean, surely they can come up with some scheme that allows him a one-on-one access to a pass from Tannehill, and you give him an opportunity to make a big play on national TV.
I agree. And, whatever his limitations may be, if you want to, if they're more comfortable with Phillips and Phillips feels fine and you want to expand on what Phillips did last weekend, I'm fine with that too. Phillips made some key plays for them last weekend, made the big play to get him in position for a kick that if they make that kick last week, the whole tone is different. But Kyle Phillips was, not too far off fitting into the category you're talking about. If he had gotten into the end zone or made a couple more plays and gotten close to 100. And he's been outstanding. I just worry about him getting beat up. I mean, he got beat up pretty good in that first game, and he's already on the injury report as questionable. Buffalo's pretty physical defense. How much does he get beat up tonight? Can he make it through the game? How limited is he? He's a guy to keep an eye on, but he's going to become a favorite pretty quickly if he keeps doing what he did last week.
Yeah, they've added they added pass rush with Von Miller, but their Achilles heel last year was their run defense, if you want to point to just a flaw, and they were good last year. They addressed that this offseason, although Ed Oliver's already been ruled out, I know, and he's been there for a while. But in the middle of the defensive line, that's where the Titans on the interior have to win the matchup. And Henry last year, just to put in perspective, week 6, so it was in October, they were kind of churning him anyway. This is right before the injury. And he had 20 carries, over 150 yards. He scored 3 touchdowns. I mean, he had one less carry than what he had last week, and he took over the game. And they have to establish that early and often. And I'm curious to see how the Bills have adjusted to however they defended him a year ago, especially without Oliver in the lineup. And I think they're also down another maybe zero technique nose tackle tonight.
Tim Settle.
Yes. Yeah,
defensive tackle. Yeah, so they're thinned out there. They've got Daquan Jones and Jordan Phillips, and they may be may have brought somebody up today because they'd be thin there. So, definitely, I'm sure Derrick Henry would very much like to have the kind of game that would quiet anybody down nationally who's thinking his foot remains a thing. And, the one hole in Derrick Henry in terms of season-long outlook for him over the last several years has been kind of the soft starts.
Yep.
So he could quiet 2 batches of critics there with a big game tonight. But I think he had a 70-something yard run in that game that was a good share of the yardage. And so more we'd take them how you can get them, but that they could use. Obviously, they'd like to rely on him tonight. Do the play action passing off of that. That's their formula. But Buffalo knows their formula. So, are the Titans, are they exerting their will tonight in terms of being able to do what they want?
When Henry was at his best, which was 2020, the 2,000-yard season, the offense was at its best. Tannehill was at his best. In September, he had 82 carries for 319 yards. First month of the season of a 2,000-yard season, he ran for 319 yards. So that for
and
those
then took off.
And then he took off. So those not familiar with the slow starts, that's what we're pointing to. He's very good, but it takes him a while. It's not just bulk in game. The workload adds up, and then he finally gets going into rhythm. For instance, in November of that same year, 113 carries, 594 yards. So
it makes you wonder about not doing anything in the preseason.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. But not in what you're saying is not even the preseason games. You're saying he doesn't do much 11 on 11 in practice. even in joint work with other teams.
Yeah.
So
There's some better formula for him there to get him going week one.
Coming up, Paul sticking with us there in Buffalo. We're going to continue to give some matchups. We will also discuss when we come back Vikings and Eagles and the wide receiver matchup, Chad. I can't wait to watch. I know they're not playing against each other, but this is on the same bar. Like if we're hyping up the quarterback battle, if Mahomes and Allen were playing, this is the same level for me in terms of what the position brings for A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson and how both guys feel like they're undervalued and underrated up until this year in terms of payday and everything else. Jefferson's got it coming. A.J. just got it. And both are being treated like bona fide pros, stars, number one receivers.
And both are alphas, the two of them. We'll discuss.
And they're elevating the play of average quarterbacks.
Yep.
That's all next on OutKick 360.
Hey, listen, if you missed my show, don't at me. I've got you covered. Take a look. I did not at the time know the name Tua Tagovailoa. I had no idea who this guy was. So this guy comes in and replaces Jalen Hurts, a kid who had led them to a, national championship, I think the year before, or was certainly the quarterback. Soup, touchdown, boom. Alabama wins a national championship. Ever since then, I have thought to myself, this guy too has got something that normal people don't have. This guy too is special. He hasn't been special yet in the NFL, but all of a sudden, Tua time has, weapons. All of a sudden, Waddle, not Tommy Waddle, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill are dangerous dudes. Tua's got some guys. A lot of talking in the offseason. I am not mad about the University of Texas spending $280,000. Let me say that again. $280,000 on Arch Manning and 8 others recruiting visit. $280,000. Let me go through some of the things that they did. A 5-star hotel. The Queen stayed at the Four Seasons Austin. They spent $50,000. $46,696 on 34 rooms for recruits, family members, UT coaches, and staff. The rate was $419. Join me 9 to 11 Eastern Time at OutKick.com.
Don't miss a thing and stay up to date with all things Tommy Lahren is Fearless by following OutKick on Instagram and Twitter. But if you did miss something, don't worry, we've got you covered. But in their apology, the party planners said they were just a little bit overzealous and wanted residents to feel the strippers' enthusiasm and energy. What do you think? Did this deserve an apology?
It's weird. If you hire a stripper for a kindergarten kid, the Democrats applaud it. But if you hire a stripper for an old veteran, this doesn't work out. You know who wasn't complaining, Tommy? All of those nurses who are usually getting groped and grabbed by these dirty old men. There's no victim in this crime. There is absolutely no victim. And I'm not just saying that because I look like a guy who gets paid in singles. I'm saying that because this is ridiculous.
Well, it was a Taiwanese nursing home, so I don't know how this would have gone over. I don't know, over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I feel like this probably has already happened, but I keep thinking about these veterans, these older residents there suffering from dementia and other disabilities. And you know what? Just let them enjoy themselves. If this is what's going to, make their lives better, more complete, I say just let them have fun. We know the whole my body, my choice thing is largely lost on liberals worldwide when it comes to the COVID never-ending series of vaccines. Yet, in a surprising, logical, and wise move, the UK Health Security Agency, based on guidance from UK's Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, will no longer offer COVID vaccines to children ages 5 to 11. It's clear from the incredibly low child vax numbers in both the UK and the USA that parents aren't about it. And it's not because they're anti-vax either. The COVID vaccine is not the same as measles, mumps, and rubella, which have been time-tested, studied, and charted. And P.S., Most kids already had COVID, and the natural immunity is far stronger than however many shots you want to jab in their arms. Tune in Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern on OutKick.com when I'll be joined by Betsy DeVos, the former United States Secretary of Education under President Trump.
Tonight, Vikings and Eagles on ABC. Philly returns home after their Week 1 win at Detroit with A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson. The Vikings took down the Packers post-game last week. Aaron Rodgers told Justin Jefferson, "You're the best player in the NFL." He's been talking big all offseason. So is A.J. I can't wait to watch that matchup as they go back and forth. It's like two great three-point shooters, or you've got the quarterback that's watching off the other sideline, Chad, with what the other guy's doing, or baseball with the home run hitters, whatever it might be, the pitchers. This is that same caliber. Both guys feel like they're not in their prime yet. They're continuing to elevate. And I think most people expect Justin Jefferson to take over that spot. And A.J. just got paid, and he's the number one wideout in Philly. We will preview that in depth in just a moment. Koharski with us. Paul up in Buffalo in Orchard Park for tonight's matchup that kicks off in a little under 2 hours. Titans on the road in Buffalo.
Paul's on the floor now, I think. Looks cozy, though, down on the floor.
I am. I had to go where the electricity is.
Nice.
And the electricity is, you can see this plug
on the floor.
right here.
It's, in fact, on the floor. Paul, I keep thinking about the lack of electricity provided by John Robinson's first-round draft picks and how that's going to haunt this team, and it could haunt them tonight. Taylor Lewan, I don't know that it's a good matchup for him in this game at left tackle. Nicholas Petit-Frere, he's going to need help. He's only playing because of a failure at right tackle in the first round in Isaiah Wilson. And then Jeffrey Simmons, the one that's really worked out for the Titans, it feels like he needs an otherworldly type performance, and he's capable of it. But for the Titans to get the win tonight, we saw it on the goal line stand a year ago to preserve a win against the Bills at home on Monday Night Football. When you look at the first round picks or lack thereof in this game, what are your thoughts?
Well, you're right in line. You skip past Dylan Radin's not a first round pick, a second round pick made to make up for the first round pick. They skipped a first rounder and a second rounder to get to a third rounder at right tackle. A.J. Brown, not a first-round pick, but a second-round pick, who is tremendous. And Hutton's talking about previewing him for the Eagles. They couldn't find an agreement there. The real X factor for this offense that offset was the yin and yang with Derrick Henry, and they don't have any yang right now until they show us that they do. And I don't think among the three of us we have faith that there's going to be that guy at least in week 2 in Buffalo. Maybe Traylon Burks surprises us. Maybe Robert Woods has a big game. But I think anything would be a surprise in that regard. So, this team is put together without, outstanding first-round picks. You mentioned Lewan. He's not even J-Rob's pick. He was his predecessor's pick. He's got a little bit of a ding. He was on the injury report this week. And so the Titans tend to be a team that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not loaded. It's not a roster loaded with superstars. And I think all of us would say that the biggest reason that we give this team a chance is because its track record in games like this and its track record in games like this traces back to Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel has a really good track record in games like this. Mike Vrabel has a way of having his team ready. His staff has a way of putting together plans that work in situations like this, in atmospheres like this. That would be, if I was listing, reasons the Titans might win this game, reasons the Titans might lose this game, under reasons they might win this game. Number one is Mike Vrabel. And I've written that, and we've talked about that before this season. The number one reason I would be optimistic about the Titans this season, given that I don't think they're as good a team as they were last year, personnel-wise, is because I think Mike Vrabel has a way of making up for that. 91 players last year where he was shuffling guys in and out. I think he loses Christian Fulton for the week and thinks, so what? Because many times before he has shown us that he doesn't panic when he loses a key guy. He just he's got an ego to him where he says, I'll outsmart the other guy with this plan. Shane Bowen, let's get to work.
And Hutton, you've got maybe, I don't know if it's unlikely, but a player to watch tonight in this game?
A very unheralded, under the radar. We're going to the depths here, but I do think it plays a factor. They decided to move on from Brett Kern and go with Ryan Stonehouse. And if you're not going to stop the Bills' offense, you need to make them drive the field and eat clock. The one thing there's no debate on is Kern is better in the short yardage, pin punts, directional, all that. And not only Stonehouse, but Hilliard's not playing. Hilliard's his personal protector on the punt team. So there is a little there's something to watch there. They only punted twice in this game a year ago. That was they didn't have the greatest stats passing the football. They ran it very well, but they didn't punt it all that often. And Kern did some really nice things to pin them back. The Bills can drive it. They haven't punted in 3 of their last 4 regular season games. So when you put that in perspective, if the idea is to keep Josh Allen on the sideline, when he's on the field, make him eat clock just like you're trying to do. At least in my mind, that's what Stonehouse has got to do. That was the big worry, Paul. And on the special teams aspect of things, we should also mention Bullock, who's coming off a game-winning miss. There are a lot of factors on special teams that have not been discussed this week.
And wind is usually a factor in Orchard Park. Is that a factor up there tonight, Paul?
There is a very strong side-to-side wind. The American flag at the far end of the stadium is completely unfurled side to side.
Oh, good.
It's Buffalo. Yeah, he's there.
Yeah.
It's official.
Welcome to Western New York.
It's going to be a factor in the kicking game for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of a factor in the passing game. So it's not cold, but it is windy. This is the right time of year to be here in terms of temperature.
I'm just going to go on a
wind
limb.
Doesn't care about what season.
I'm going to go on a crazy limb here and say it's going to be way more of a factor for Randy Bullock and for Ryan Stonehouse than it will be for the Bills specialist in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can all agree that Randy Bullock probably has a psychological element to his game tonight that he didn't have heading into last week because he had a very good preseason, a very good camp. But you miss a 47-yarder to lose a game, and you're Randy Bullock, who has not been the most consistent kicker in the league. And now, if the Titans are worrying about hash mark tonight, they get a problem.
No question about that. Jeremy Fowler tweets out that per a source in Buffalo, Gabriel Davis is not playing. He was questionable with an ankle injury. So
that's massive.
Yeah, the way Fowler describes this tweet, team had held out hope, but playing was considered an uphill battle since Saturday's injury. He's out barring a surprise. That's what
But
Fowler
I will
said.
say, Hutton, what that means is that there is, I think, a lot less of a chance that Caleb Farley can avoid Isaiah McKenzie or Crowder. And I don't like those matchups at all.
I agree. And that's part of, I think, Chad's point is you got a first-round corner where you don't like a matchup against a running back who's transitioned to slot receiver.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have to avoid anything with the first rounder in his second year.
For those just joining us, Paul, Josh Gordon is playing. He's been elevated to the roster. We don't know yet about Kyle Phillips, who has a shoulder issue, and he's also questionable.
I'm told Kyle Phillips is expected to play.
Okay. With that in mind, is Gordon there just for injury insurance, or do you think that they've been working him in to the point where he can do something?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd be doing this if they didn't have something for him. So I would hope that he'd be getting Cody Hollister snaps. Maybe that's naive of me, Cody Hollister disliker that I am. But I want a guy's, going to do the blocking that Cody Hollister will do, but also offers, much more of a vertical threat. And Josh Gordon at his best can do that. And he seems to have everything in order right now.
Looking through a preview for the Vikings and Eagles, Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen's been very good on Monday night in primetime games, except against the Titans. And even those games, he's been good. We're judging this on win-loss. Cousins is 2-9, and the 2 wins have been against Chicago. He's now on the road with the Vikings offense that looked fresh.
Paul's primetime performer, the Chicago Bears, who looked great last night on Sunday Night Football. Boy, all of your dreams and expectations came true with that game.
But thinking of Minnesota, Paul, Chad, they have the chance to go 2-0. Same for Philly. And the 2-0 team that comes out of this, I'm buying in. Like the winner of this game to get to 2-0, I think wins their respective division. I'm that high on Minnesota after watching what they did to Green Bay, even though Green Bay is going to figure things out. And knowing what Philly's capable of with the arsenal of weapons they have around Jalen Hurts, I'm very intrigued by this because this is 2 young head coaches, average quarterbacks, and star talent around them that should be able to put up points all season long.
It was a lot easier for me to pick the Titans to cover 10 or 10.5 tonight in this game than it was for me to pick one or the other. It's a 3.5-point favorite for Philly at home, I think, against Minnesota.
That's what DraftKings has it, yeah.
In this game, and I'm having a much more difficult time picking this one. I'm with you, Hutton. I think the winner of this game at 2-0 is a contender in the NFC. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I'm not saying the loser is not.
No, I know.
But, I mean, it's easy to look at the winner of this one and say, okay, they've got a real chance here, especially with, now I say that, after the fact that Cooper Rush just beat the defending AFC champions. But I'd feel really good about Philly without Dak Prescott with Dallas for a while. In the NFC East, a little bit different now with that big win for the Cowboys, but really good matchup, sneaky good matchup in the second game of the doubleheader tonight.
I think the winner and the loser are in prime shape here. Winner for sure. But I agree, a loser is going to be a factor in the NFC also. Sad that I won't get to see any of this game except for highlights in the middle of the night while I'm not doing any sleeping, getting ready for a 5:30 flight tomorrow morning. But ESPN/ABC getting a hell of a combo matchup tonight.
No doubt.
I think I like Philly here.
I lean Philly. However, in watching the Eagles-Lions game a week ago, and the Lions' offense is for real. I mean, they put up 35+ in the first 2 weeks. I mean, that's what we saw them do against Philly's defense. I think is a kind of it's good. It's a good judge of what Philly's defense allowed. DeAndre Swift ran all over that defense, and I think for a young head coach coming in, where it's going to be more passing offense oriented. This is a game where I think they need to be more of Dalvin Cook era last year and years prior than maybe what we saw last week in that one snapshot of who we think the Vikings are moving forward. I think they can go heavy Dalvin Cook and dial up a win running against this Philly defense, because I know that Philly is going to be extremely balanced in their attack. They run it extremely well, and now they have the passing arsenal to go with it. Now I think it's for Minnesota to show they can do the same thing. And based on what Philly allowed to DeAndre Swift, we know Dalvin Cook's up there with the top backs in the league. I look for him to have a big night.
I think with several of these quarterbacks now, one of the big entry questions into the game is how well can they make Jalen Hurts stay in the pocket, throw the football. His escapability is a factor in every game. So Minnesota, one of their top tasks defensively is keeping him in the pocket, forcing him to throw. I'm a lot less scared of him in those situations than I am if he's scooting around like we saw, some of those quarterbacks doing yesterday. Kyler Murray comes first to mind.
Going back to Titans Bills, Adam Schefter reporting. Paul, I know you saw this. Bills wide receiver Gabe Davis officially inactive tonight.
Yeah, not good for the Bills, but I do think there's an upside to them in McKenzie and Crowder against Favre.
And Khalil Shakir is a 5th-round pick out of Boise State that's been warming up with Josh Allen as we speak. So it sounds like he's taking the roster spot. He was inactive last week. He's taking the roster spot. And hopefully, if you're a Titans fan listening to this, you're thinking that's the only time we need to hear his name.
That would
Kumaro
be
also the old Aaron Rodgers favorite, is the guy on the depth chart behind Gabe Davis.
And then you still have McKenzie, Diggs, Crowder, and Dawson Knox as well.
Yeah, not a bad bunch.
No. Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. We give our final thoughts on this matchup and more as Paul joins us from Buffalo, getting set for kickoff right at an hour and a half away from the Titans and Bills, followed by the Eagles and Vikings. More previews, predictions, and big takeaways, things to watch for, and everything else. It's straight ahead on OutKick 360.
So this is a question I like to ask veterans. It's another opportunity to kind of shine a light on America, but also on the flip side of and how some people are ungrateful. I think with young people my age and younger, they take a lot of things for granted, number one. And two, because to your previous point, life has been so easy, they don't seem to understand that things happened before them, but their lives were very difficult. And a lot of people paid a high price to be here. You're one of them. You know a lot of people who are one of them, and so on and so on. So when you hear young people trash America as a terrible country or a horrific place to live, what instinctually do you want to respond when you hear someone just acting like this is a terrible place?
I have to keep my instincts in check. Quick story, true story. Right after getting back from Somalia, we were invited by the future mayor of New York, D.C., just a handful of us, to go to New York City and to lead the Veterans Day Parade in November. By the way, the future mayor of New York City was Rudy Giuliani. And Giuliani invited me and about 5 of the Rangers to show up and to start the Veterans Day Parade and to walk it down Fifth Avenue. And while we were in uniform and getting ready to stage at the start of the Veterans Day Parade, no exaggeration, we were accosted in the subway by people who were screaming at us and spitting on us and calling us baby killers. And all of this is because of what they saw in the news about Somalia. And my buddy next to me went berserk and almost killed somebody in the subway. And I had to grab him and remind him, he doesn't know, the guy that's assaulting you right now doesn't know what you've gone through and will never understand what you've gone through. Now, to my buddy, Tim Pringle, that didn't make it any better because he's being spit on and accosted in the subway in New York. But I also reminded him he doesn't have to know and he will never understand because he lives in a country where you have done for him what he didn't have to do for himself. And it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, but just remind yourself tonight, Tim, he doesn't know, he will never understand because you have done for him what he didn't have to do for himself. And when people make disparaging comments about America, when Americans make disparaging comments about America, I simply think to myself, you're just putting your ignorance on display. You don't know what you don't know, and you're broadcasting to the world what you don't know because you have never had to be in the shoes or the boots of the guys and gals that I served with. And if you did, you would never make these comments. Because let's just be honest, America is not perfect, not even close. But I've been all over the world, and there is not another nation on earth, not even close to the freedoms that you have in America. So complain all you want, but you can't go anywhere else and find better, not even close.
That is a great answer. It's an answer that I like to hear. The reason I asked that is I went to college kind of when the Iraq War was not in a great place, I think is what would be a way to say. It wasn't as bad as 06, 07. And I was a poli-sci guy, so I had classes with young people, and they talk about like American soldiers were over there like slaughtering kids or just stuff like that. I'm like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. And not only that, you're saying those things from the air-conditioned campus of the University of Wisconsin. You're never going to get on a plane and fly over there, but you'll critique, you'll judge people you don't know, and that always drove me up the wall. And I feel like, unfortunately, that anti-American mindset seems to be getting more and more common.
Titans rookie wide receiver Kyle Phillips will play. He is active as the team has released the inactives. Julius Chestnut is on the inactive list along with Hilliard, Dontrell Hilliard, who was ruled out prior to them boarding the flight to Buffalo. OutKick 360 rolls on. Final segment ahead of Monday Night Football, where tomorrow we'll be recapping both games, Eagles and Vikings, and, of course, Titans and Bills. Paul is with us in Buffalo. Paul, give us 2 to 3 specific matchups to watch that will determine the outcome of this matchup tonight in Orchard Park, New York.
Well, I'm certainly interested in seeing Jeffrey Simmons against Roger Saffold, a matchup that we've seen for the last several years in practice. Saffold's shoulders have become an issue. It's part of why he's not with the Titans anymore, that and price. But Simmons knows how to go at him. And you would hope that that would be an advantage for the Titans. We've mentioned here Caleb Farley. You know, it's a good thing that Gabe Davis is out of this game for the Titans' sake. He's a very productive receiver. But Caleb Farley in joint practices with the Cardinals and with Tampa Bay really had problems with little receivers. And little receivers, Isaiah McKenzie and Jamison Crowder, are going to get probably increased chances here with Gabe Davis out of the game. And there's more potential that one of them winds up outside here and there on Caleb Farley. If I'm the Bills, I'm trying to do that on purpose. Caleb Farley, a long guy, tall, has some problems breaking down against those guys. I'd really watch that in this game. And then how can the Titans handle Josh Allen's an obvious one? They don't want him to run to his right. In some games where they've really concentrated on hemming in a quarterback, more so than they've concentrated on hitting said quarterback, they've had some success. Josh Allen among those quarterbacks, quite frankly, the last 2 years, they've beaten the Bills both times in Nashville. But watch how they go after him. If I'm a Titans fan, I wouldn't be yelling at the TV when they don't necessarily attack him the way you want, because there's a broader purpose in mind.
Yes. For last year, and I referenced last year because it was a tight game. The Bills played well. Titans played, they made one more play at the very end. Point being, they sacked him 3 times, and this was among the start of the stretch where Harold Landry earned his big payday. He had 2 sacks in that game. Simmons had 1. Their best playmakers up front played a big factor. Bud Dupree needs to pick up that.
It's a good name to bring up.
Yeah.
Landry's a good name to bring up. They really missed him last week, and you can learn how you're missing him, particularly in run defense last week. But does that mean that you can fix it with the people that you have? They're certainly smart about it, but there's only so much you can do when you lose a premier player.
Paul, go get set up. We look forward to your coverage tonight at paulkoharski.com, and we will see you here tomorrow as we recap both of these games.
I will be pumping the caffeine tomorrow at over at headquarters.
And good luck with
hope your departure from the stadium is much better than your arrival at the stadium from a traffic perspective.
It can't not be. But all these drunk people will be long out of here before I am, Chad. I could only wish I write that fast.
Hey, while you're up there, throw your entire body through a table just to get in the spirit of Western New York. Just one time.
Listen, when I'm walking through here to go find an Uber, or when a buddy gives me a ride back, all the tables will be they'll be unbreakable.
There'll be no more tables to be had.
Broken. That's right.
No legs on those tables.
That's right.
See you, boys.
Later.
Thanks.
Prima nocta being declared on a lot of tables in Buffalo.
Have a great night.
In Orchard Park tonight.
Same to you. There's Paul Koharski up there in Orchard Park. And again, we will recap that game with him back in Nashville with us tomorrow. DraftKings.com. You bet $5, get $200 instantly for all new DraftKings users. You've got to be 21 years or older, and this is for first-time DraftKings Sportsbook customers only. Make a deposit of at least $5 in your Sportsbook account. Then you place a wager of at least $5 on NFL or college games. And honestly, it expires tonight. You've got 2 games left, so you've got to do it tonight for this to qualify. By doing that, you're going to receive $200 instantly on that $5 wager, in addition to any cash winnings from your original wager once it settles. Again, bet 5, get $200 instantly for all new DraftKings users. DraftKings.com and download the DraftKings app.
Can I give you the same game parlay I just played at DraftKings right now?
Yep.
I went Traylon Burks over 30.5 receiving yards.
Yep, I'm on that.
With the news of Gabe Davis out, I went Jamison Crowder over 35.5 receiving yards, and I've got anytime touchdowns from Derrick Henry and Stephon Diggs in this game. $5 will get you $70 on that bet right there. 4-way,
so you need
same game
Henry
parlay.
and Diggs to score.
So anytime touchdown by Derrick
Crowder
Henry.
to have 4 catches.
Crowder
roughly.
to have 35.5, over 35.5. Burks over 30.5.
I'm with you on that. Burks last week was around the same number. I think it was 28.5 last week. That's easy money to me. They should be getting him the football early and often.
From a Titans perspective in previewing this game, let's see a receiving target emerge. Someone that you start to see now, this is who they want to go to when it's a big moment. That's what I want to see more than anything from the Titans tonight. And the hope is that it'll be Traylon Burks.
Let's point out from a Bills perspective how they took over the game in L.A. Went on the road Thursday Night Football, took over in the second half. Not even close in terms of where they were for where the Rams were offensively. This has been a team and a defense, the Titans defense, that has held them back in recent years. It may not seem all that large or big in the grand scheme of things, but this loss where it came down to Allen slipping and Simmons making a play at the very end with 2 seconds left from the 2-yard line, whatever, that kept Buffalo from hosting a playoff game, right?
Yep.
Seeding factors into that, and they want the path to the Super Bowl, the path to Phoenix and Glendale to go through Orchard Park. this is one of those matchups you look back on. It's a big game for both, and the Titans are trying to show some confidence in what they're doing offensively because their defense generally shows up. Enjoy the 2 games tonight. We'll recap both of them and all the headlines tomorrow on OutKick 360 across the OutKick network.